Welcome back. Thanks for staying on. Centre for Development and Enterprise head and Bernstein says the South Africa situation was always going to be a hard place to govern due to centuries of racial discrimination and 48 years of apartheid. But she argues that South Africa still has enormous potential as a country. Bernstein joins us now to unpack this a little bit further. And good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. What is the most important thing, would you say, you have picked up and in your own analysis as we are going through this current crisis that is maybe as a direct result of the current leadership that we have in the country, at least in the past 5 years?
Well, as you said, I think South Africa is a country of enormous potential, but today we are in deep, deep trouble. We have a series of accelerating and entangled crises that are multiplying, that are leading to a country with declining prospects. And the president likes to talk about the 9 wasted years of the Zuma presidency, and obviously the corruption of that period is a key factor. But there's much more than that that has led to our troubles. And I'm arguing that we need an honest diagnosis of why we are in such a terrible situation before we can move forward. And the diagnosis includes some key issues of current government policy, I think a failed strategy, and the devastating consequences of that. Yeah. I'd be happy to go into any of that in detail.
So would you say the last 5 years, I mean, we characterize the others as 9 wasted years, have they been a complete waste?
I think they've been a bit of a mirage, I'm saying. On the one hand, yes, there have been a few reforms that have been introduced. They're not nearly bold enough. They've moved at glacial speed, but things keep getting worse. And what happens is that the president makes speeches where he eloquently describes how bad things are in South Africa, but speech after speech, he proposes the same solutions. Yeah. So I'm saying that we need a completely new look at how we are going to get out of the terrible situation we're in. And that requires a great deal more honesty about bad policies, about a failed strategy, by which I mean ANC unity is more important than the future of South Africa. This is an impossible sort of strategy which has failed. Yeah. And then we need to adapt. We need to learn from our failures and try something new. But to give us more and more of the same is deepening the South African polycrisis, right, and not solving anything.
Let's firstly stay with the theory that is the one that the president keeps repeating over and over again. We'll get to some of the policies in a moment. But one of his favorite things to say is, of course, we will come up with a social compact. And many people have been very critical of this theory of a social compact because up until this point, it's something that has been really in his speeches, but nobody seems to really know where this social compact is. Is that as a theory something that is now believable when he says it?
Well, I think the president himself seems to have given up the idea of a grand social compact. I think in a democracy, which is what South Africa is, we have elections, we elect leaders, and then leaders must lead. They must make decisions on how to proceed. They can consult people, they can bring people with them, but what South Africa desperately needs is leadership. And I'm saying that requires honesty about where we are, why we're in this terrible situation, and then a compelling plan to get us out of it. Yeah. A social compact, well, I think it's impossible. I think it's a bad idea. And I think you have to say we can't all agree on everything. We need to change course because state monopolies that don't work and push up costs have failed. Cadre deployment where we put people in critical positions in our society, mainly because they are loyal to the party rather than they are fit for the job, has failed. And I can go through a number of other examples. So a compact is not the right way to get South Africa out of this mess.
So what do we put in a place of that? I tell you what, because, I mean, this criticism has also come from the former president, President Thabo Mdluli, who's also said, I'm still to find a plan. I've been looking for this plan. I hear there is a plan, but where is this plan? Because if it must be a plan, I'm sure it must be measured, it must be time-bound, we must know exactly what the goalposts are. But there is currently no plan.
Well, the first place to start, as I keep saying, is to really understand where we are. You cannot say the state is in, well, I think it's corrupt and it's collapsing in many, many areas, and then tell me that that same state is going to lead the economy and transform South Africa. It doesn't make sense. It's not plausible. I think the state is very, very weak in South Africa today, whatever your ideology. There are parts of our society with enormous capacity. They're to be found in our pretty dynamic private sector and in NGOs and other non-state actors, but they're not to be found in our collapsing local government or our failing sort of national state department. So we need to say, where has South Africa got strength? What is working? How do we bring in people who know how to turn big systems around? So I'm calling for a really fundamental change of approach, because I think if anybody was looking at South Africa today from out of space, they would have to say that whoever is running this place doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. Speaking of a fundamental change of approach, one of the things that we have seen with this particular administration of President Ramaphosa are task teams that are located in the presidency. I mean, you can name it, task team for everything. There is a committee that he puts up in his office that is supposedly going to come up with answers. Is that, as a strategy, something that has been useful, or maybe is it part of what has added to our problems and why we are here?
I'm saying the president's strategy has failed with devastating consequences because at its core, he is determined to keep the ANC united. And the result of that is he has people in his cabinet who have a vested interest in a corrupt and chaotic status quo, and many of whom are not able to fulfill their mandates. They're not competent for the jobs they're being asked to do. So I don't think we have a united cabinet. It's divided on how to move forward for South Africa, and we don't have a cabinet that's, you can see it in energy. They're not united around one strategy. So what he does is he creates task teams, he has summits, he does everything but govern. What you have to do is fire a whole lot of people who are not fit for the job. And you have to say, we're going this way and not that way. And to pretend you can do this with a very weak state, that they can, you know, we can have state monopolies for energy, for Transnet, for all sorts of things, for the ports, is nonsense. It's not convincing. You have to say, where does capacity lie? And you've got to bring in private players who know how to fix big systems and get the trains running. Instead of which we have task team after task team that never seems to have any deadlines, or they don't meet them.
I'm glad you bring up the question of Transnet, for example. One would say one of the policies, and you can give me a critique of it, whether you think as an idea it was a good idea. They decided, look, they're going to allow private sector to come in, particularly at Transnet, to be able to, I don't know, lease or rent part of that rail and take care of it, and therefore invest in it and build the necessary infrastructure. Was that as an idea, which I suppose also resulted into being policy, a good direction?
But they said that, but they didn't do it. So we're not seeing a wholehearted commitment to opening up to market players and competition, to building competitive markets. What Transnet said was, oh, we'll allow you on some lines for only 2 years to come in and help run these railway lines. That's not opening up to markets. It's a ridiculous idea. So you've got to make a full-blooded commitment to opening up our ports, our train system, and many other things, our energy to, yes, we're going to have competitive markets to bring down prices, to increase efficiency, and to get out of the terrible situation we're in. So what happens with this government is they say one thing, sounds quite good, and they do another. We say we're in favor of growth and investment, but actually in many respects we introduce policies that are anti-growth. So, you know, we say that Transnet's going to open up to the private sector, but then they do it in a ham-handed way because they don't really understand how markets and private actors work. Yeah. So we have the wrong people on boards. We have the wrong people running big institutions, and you can't suddenly change direction because they don't really understand what a competitive market economy would look like with the appropriate role for the state and regulation, and how to get partnerships going so that we actually can get results. We're not getting any fundamental changes in our crises, which just get worse and worse.
What we have seen, and since December, is a president humming and oohing around a cabinet reshuffle, right? It's something that they're saying has been mulling over Christmas. I suppose even in the new year, he's still mulling over. He's in the NEC Lekgotla of the ANC. He's still mulling over the question of who he's going to put to lead these particular portfolios. What's your analysis? Do you think currently he's surrounded by people with very little capacity and leadership ability?
Absolutely. My analysis is that even if he does reshuffle the cabinet, the ANC talent pool is very, very shallow. So I don't think it's going to make much difference. There's clearly an important power play going on by the minister, Gwedi Mantashe and others, and they have a different view from what the president says his view is on how to proceed. So we have a deeply divided ruling party and a weak leader. So we go round and round and round, and people say, oh, wait for SONA, wait for a cabinet reshuffle. I don't think these are the right questions to be asking. I think we're fiddling while Rome is burning. The society is, many things are collapsing around us as we all sit in the dark for hours and hours every day. This isn't normal. This isn't how you attract investment. It's a joke. The Reserve Bank now thinks we're going to grow at 0.3% for this year. So we're below 1%. This is devastating for the country, for unemployment. We're heading for a terrible year. Now, what we need is some real leadership and not the same old, same old. That means you have to think differently. And I'm really saying that the president as a reformer has lost credibility. In fact, it's been a mirage for the last 5 years, and that citizens, leaders of all kinds, business needs to think very differently about how we get South Africa back on track.
And Bernstein, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, leaving you with that picture. Fiddling while Rome is burning. Well, talking of fiddling, when we continue next, we learn a little bit about those who are fiddling still at Eskom.